Now, the next session is going to start, and as we know that this session is being presided by Sir Professor Rajesh Kumar Jha. So, first of all, I invite the chair, Sir Professor Rajesh Kumar Jha. Please come on the dais. Shipra, ma'am, please come on the dais. And I think I welcome Ajay Verma, Professor Ajay Verma, who will present his lecture in online mode. So first of all, let me give a brief introduction of Professor Rajesh Kumar Jha, sir. Professor Jha, sir, has done his MA MPhil PhD from Delhi University. He has taught at Zakir Hussain College, Delhi University from 1997 to 2003 and at the Department of Philosophy, North Eastern Hill University, Shillong, 2003 to 2004. From 2004 onwards, he is teaching at the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. Recently, he has published a book on the Advaitic and Tantric philosophy of Shankara. So, sir, this session is being presided by you. So, I request you please conduct the session. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel honored to have the privilege of getting a session to chair. And the speakers, they are all acquainted with me already. They are all my friends. So, first of all, may I invite Professor Bimlen Kumarji to please come to the dais, have a seat. Shipra is already here. And I think Ajay is going to take the lecture online mode. So, he will be, I think, has he joined or is yes? Okay, so he's already here. So, very good. And this is the last technical session. After that, we'll be having the valedictory session. So there is a paucity of time. Definitely, we have to adjust with that. So I would request the learned speakers to, stick to the time frame. And I suggest that, you should make the presentation in approximately 20 minutes so that we are left with at least 10 minutes of interaction with the audience. That would be very useful, and I think it is necessary as well, because without that it would not be complete. And Professor Bimlendra Kumanji is a dear friend of ours, a professor here in the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies. Presently, he is occupying the ICCR chair in the Buddhist Lumini University in Nepal for a year, and is doing great work over there. So, may I invite Professor Bimlendra Kumanji to kindly present his paper, and if possible, with approximately 20 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Respected chairman of this session, Professor Rajesh Kumar Jha ji, distinguished guests or delegates who are sitting on the dais, and distinguished participants who are coming from outside, and research scholars and our my dear friends of this Banaras University. It gives me proud and privilege to present my paper. I'm going to present my paper on the non-violence and how conflict resolutions can be resolved through the principles of non-violence. Although this paper is prepared with a view of a comparative view with the Blessed One Buddha as well as Lord Mahavir. Let us see that how these conflicts are coming. If you go through the global happiness index presented by UNO, there are 10 years decline. Year by year, we are declining our global happiness index. The whole problem lies within the conflicts. Conflicts are inevitable, but it can be resolved through the other factors also. How these conflicts are coming into society, there are so many problems which are being discussed by our social thinkers like Lord Mahavir and Lord Buddha also. Buddha says that there are some of the psychological states which are appearing in our mind, and these psychological states are latent factors which are appearing in the form of violence. This violence is nothing but it is our immoral psychic states. And Buddha talks about generally there are 7 types of immoral psychic states which create problem. But in other suttas also there are some of the factors which are creating problems like conflicts in our society. How these conflicts can be resolved, Buddha has also discussed so many things like Brahma Vihar, Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekha. But I will discuss that how this non-concept of violence or non-violence has been discussed in our text also. How this non-violence, the concept of which has emerged, and it has become one of the foremost of Anubratas and Mahabharatas in Jainism also, and why it has got much importance in our Jainism. Buddhism talks about the mental state as well as Jainism talks about our physical behavior. And all the psychological problems which are related, Buddha talks about that these are creating from our mind also. But in Jainism, we are seeing that all things are related with the intention and behavior. And there are 3 things, physical, vocal, and mental actions, which are creating our problems through the behaviors. So this is the concept of our violence, why this violence is coming into our day-to-day life. The main problem which has been discussed by the Buddha, that is due to pramad, that non-vigilance. Buddha says that this pramad is the main cause of the death. And apramad, that is the diligence, is the path of getting a state of eternal bliss. In Dhammapada also it has been said that apamado, amatam padam, pamado machano padam. That this pramad is nothing but it is a path which leads towards the death also. So this pramad, due to absence of this pramad, there are some of the problems which are created problems. And due to pramad, this violence comes into existence. This pramad is nothing but it gives the slowness and the torpor also. And why these conflicts are coming due to the pramad also, because it is the main cause of our violence. And that is why in the Eightfold Path, the second noble path is called as Samma Sankappo, that is Samyak Sankalpa. And there are 3 determinative thoughts which have been discussed there. That is the right determinations related with the renunciation, Nekham Sankappo, Abhyapad Sankappo, that is the right thought or determinations related with our friendliness, And lastly, there is the Avihimsa Sankappo, that is the right determinations related with the Avihimsa. Here, Avihimsa is nothing but it is a concept which is called as Ahimsa in Jainism also. And Avihimsa has been discussed by our the commentators that it is where there is a total destruction of the violence. This is called as Avihimsa. There is another term which comes in Buddhist text that is called as Vihimsa. So Vihimsa Nisattoti Avihimsa. And secondly, this Avihimsa has been interpreted by the commentator as that it is another name of the compassion, that is the Karuna. That how this Karuna is the right thought related with the non-violence. So here it is called that Karuna or compassion is not only a verbal sympathy, but how a person makes an effort to eradicate the suffering of the others. Par dukkham haday kampanamati. After seeing the suffering of others, how a person make an effort of eradicating the suffering of others, this is called as Karuna. Tamiti dukkham runati ti tam pavisati binasai bhaimaticha. That how he is making an effort of this. So same concept here in the non-violence in Jainism we are also having. So I am going to read out that how this ahimsa, the concept which has been discussed in Jainism, and how it has been compared with our Buddhist text also. I will discuss some of the points and how the concept of the traditional view of non-violence coming into the traditional text like Acharang Sutra, how the concept in the modern time, it changing, how the traditional view of remaining idle or becoming, you can say, alone, how this concept of non-violence is changing in the present time, I will discuss in a very brief manner. So this conflict in the society persists in conjugations with certain deep-rooted latent psychological states, namely that is the anusaya. So some social conflicts are psychologically conditioned and they are obviously consequence of an unreflective mechanic response to the some experiences. All the behaviors are related with our five senses and their objects also. So conflicts cannot be overcome by overcoming all social inequalities. The humanism in Jainism stands on the basis of engagement in sensuous and social life within self-imposed restrictions. The basic philosophy of Jainism is killing even the smallest insects out of non-violence, which is considered as foremost among the five vows of Jainism, Panchbratas. Other vows like truth, satyas are meant from safeguarding the vow of non-violence. So other factors of anubratas are protecting our main, that is the non-violence. In the implementation of non-violence, the requirements are less strict for the laity who has taken minor vows anubratas than for the monastics who are bounded by major vows mahabhratas to train themselves towards the mahabhratas in due course of time. So ahimsa is considered as the first and greatest among all the mahabhratas. It has been called the ultimate essence of dharma or righteousness by the Hindus, Buddhists, and Jainas alike. In Jainism, non-violence is considered as the supreme moral virtue, ahimsa paramo dharma. Jainas have laid the greatest stress on it. Vrat is defined as a deliberately adopted rule laying down what it is to be done and how it is to be done. The vratas becoming its effect as avoidance or birati. It is described as a psychic state consisting in withdrawal or nivrati prahan. It is not a negative concept, but it may be considered as a positive action. It can not be considered as a restraint sambara, but it is a withdrawal of the will from alien objects and willing the self and remaining within it. It implies compassion or beings and means the abundance of patience. So here in the context of Jainism, ahimsa is also in the sense of compassion. Now it is the same as purification of conduct, charitra. In Buddhism also the term charitra is the fulfillment of prescribed precepts. Idam kartabam ti payati sikhapad purnam. There are two types of vratas, namely Mahavrata and Anubratas. Therefore, ahimsa as an Anuvrata implies withdrawal from the gross violence and behavior, whereas a Mahavrata, it implies at withdrawal from all evil of the nature of violence at any level, mental, vocal, and physical, whether done personally or caused to be done by another or approved. There is a distinction between Buddhist and Jain ahimsa. The Buddhists give more stress on the psychic activity, while Jainas concentrate more on physical behavior. The Jainas are such a Buddhist view that the test of hinsa and ahimsa in the direction of will. Violence leads or loss of peace and hatred here. The painful consequences of violence for others must be contemplated on the analogy of the violence to the oneself. Without such a sense of equality, it is not possible to practice virtue. Again, friendliness must be cultivated for all beings and compassion for all those who suffer. It is also compared with the teachings of the Buddha, that where Buddha in the Metta Sutta of Sutnipat says that Mittam cha sab lokosmin manasam bhave apimarnam, that there must be immeasurable friendliness to all the living beings. So here also in Jainism there is a talk of friendliness, that until unless we do not have friendliness, we cannot have non-violence. Externally, this pure will expresses itself in friendliness, compassion, helpfulness, etc., and leads to avoidance of all the acts of violence which are contrary to the spiritual nature of the agent. In Buddhism, friendliness must be cultivated for all the beings and compassion for all those who suffer. So, compassion, we have discussed that how this compassion has been discussed in the teachings of the Buddha, that it is nothing but it is a effort to eradicate the suffering of the others. Jainism talks about the purity of the will and how this purity of the will starts. It is the recognition of one's own spiritual nature. And whenever we are having the violence, it is nothing but the forgetfulness of our spiritual nature of the quality of a being. Again, this the excessive attention given by the Jainas to details of the bodily behavior is due to their doctrines of souls are to be encountered almost anywhere. The Jain doctrine of ahimsa is distinguished by its apparent extremism, arriving from the peculiar Jainas doctrine of the soul and the karma. Here, action or kriya has its source in innate power, that is the virya of the soul, which provides the perceptible focus, that is the upayoga, to the mental activity, which includes the diverse creative states and impulses and their resultant dispositions and effects. There are two types of kriya, that is the praspanad or parinam. As a praspanad, it gives the power to the soul to make an action, and as a parinam, it gives the resultant for the non-violence, or whether it is mental action, physical actions, and vocal actions. So mental activity in turn induces physical motion and result parinam is the inflow of material particles, in particular of the infinite and requisites subtle particles of karma, which contact the soul and cover up its parts in diverse way. This is the process of yoga and bandha. This cannot be summarized. That concept of ahimsa refers to a number of mental processes which tie into the elimination of karma, breaking out from the process of repeated existence and entering into a state of eternal bliss. It is a process of withdrawal and renunciation in which people are abstaining from the violence or the hinsa. There are 5 practices for which violence can be uprooted. These are the 5 practices in Jainism. Bhagupti, that is the care in speech. Second, Manogupti, that is the care in thoughts. Iriya Samiti, care in behavior or movement of the body. Adan Nikshepan Samiti, that is the care in food. And Alokit Pan Bhojana, that is the care in drink. These are also related with our principles of Satipatthana, mindfulness, related with the Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana. How we can be aware related with our body, physical and vocal, mental activities. So this is there are 5 types of practices. The main practices which have been discussed, that one must reflect that what is the consequences of a violence if it comes to oneself. And in that say, he can eradicate the violence. So concept of ahimsa has influenced to environmental movements in today's world, and it has changed its meaning to have balance with other cultures and the values. The philosophy of loving and another, treating all beings with respect, are likely to change the violent world. The festival of Chama Parv in Jainism nowadays, Chama Parv is being celebrated by all the Jainas. And whenever this is celebration of Chama Parv, that even a elder person asks his juniors to forgive for all the actions. So this has been also given in our Buddhist text in the Mitra Sutta of Sutnipat, and it is said that how Arogino Khemino Hunti Sabba Satta Bhavantu Sukhitatta, that all the living beings must be happy and healthy. Even Acharya Nagarjuna, when he was asked to summarize the teachings of the Buddha in single word, he uttered that ahimsa is the essence of the teachings of the Buddha. And here ahimsa is not, you can say, only the action, but it is a positive action in the sense of curtailment of physical, vocal, and mental actions, how we can restrain it. So the Pali term ahimsa is avihimsa or avihisa, which has been discussed in our terms also. So a strong determination related with that, let all the beings be happy. Arogino Khemino Hunti Sabbe Satta Bhavanti Sukh Satta or Bhavantu Sab Mangalam. These are the concept related with the Jainism of the Chama Parva or Payushan Parva, and we are having Salekhana. This is another festival which is being, that how we can restrain our, and there are so many methods of Salekhana which is being done by Jainas nowadays also. So this concept, Jain Ahimsa, is a truly personal way of our religious discipline. It forbids the taking of all life, however, that might be justified or excused in other religions, and warns that nothing short of hell or animal rebirth awaits those who kill or who die while entertaining thoughts of violence. So the perspective of Jain Ahimsa does allow Jain to sacrifice even his own life in order to guard and nurture his soul. So nowadays there is a more stress on this, that how people are thinking about it. And there was a concept in our Jainism, that how this Acharang Sutra discusses about that withdrawing from the world and not interfering in the inevitable cycle of ahimsa, that is the violence. But in recent times, we are seeing that how the concept of non-violence is changing. So meaning of ahimsa in the Jain religious has evolved a more cooperative sense of non-violence that focuses on helping others, a form of compassion. So Jainas are supporting or they are helping other movements also, or they are not making austere practices, but how the movement of vegetarianism and other sense of violence who are supporting. So the Jainas are supporting each other. So here there is a movement of how the cooperative sense of non-violence is being evolved nowadays in Western countries, especially in USA, United States of America, how this concept is being changed also. So there is a secular concept of ahimsa also, that how this non-violence can be also adopted with other religions also. Again, this the main purpose of our non-violence in Jainism is that how the soul may remain unaffected by the injuries, that is the hinsa, infected upon by the injuries, hinsa, inflicted upon it by attachment and the aversions, rag and the dvesh, and may meet its corporal death in perfect peace with itself and the world. At last, I would like to conclude it with the one of the verse of Pratikraman Sutra, that khame mi sab jive, sabbe khamantu me, metti me sab bhuyesu, beram majh na ke navi. That ahimsa is stated with active ahimsa also. But here it is said that how a person's ask that I am forgiving to all also must forgive me also, and I must have friendliness to others, and all must have friendliness to me also. There must be no any aversions towards me. So this type of concept which has been given in the Pratikraman Sutra. So this now ahimsa, it has become active non-violence or active ahimsa also, that how the concept of ahimsa can be applied in our day-to-day life, how this concept can be evolved by all the persons, and how this is sustained. The teachings of the non-violence in Jainism and Buddhism can be applied in our day-to-day life. So there are socially engaged Buddhism also, and there are active Buddhism also. But here also in Jainism, we are having the concept of active ahimsa, that how this ahimsa concept can be applied in our day-to-day life. So thank you very much. There are some of the things, but due to time, I am concluding here. Thank you very much. Purification stage also. In Jainism also we are having stages of purifications, that how our consciousness can be purified or jiva can be purified. And here in Jainism also we see that how the soul, which is being in motion due to of our karma also. And this karma we are talking about, these are two types, Pariyaspanda or Parinam. And due to this Pariyaspanda, it becomes, you can say, active. That is, it gives Briya energy also. And due to this Parinam, that Parinam, our karma, we are having our physical, vocal, mental imbalances in our society. So we have to check it, that how we have to check or purify our consciousness or jiva or soul in Jainism also. So in that way we can do things.
Dr. Bhagat.
First of all, thank you for your brilliant lecture. But I have some problems with this valorization of non-violence, uh, because most philosophies and religion presuppose methodological individualism, as if the problem of violence and non-violence were merely individual problem. It is merely a psychological phenomenon. But there is also the structural violence or non-violence, the violence of the state, or patriarchy, or caste. Okay, so how do you perceive the violence or non-violence of these structures? Because the influence of the consequence of the violence of these institutions are far more destructive. So this is the problem. And what do you think of emancipatory violence? The violence of the oppressed, when they are faced with oppression, and they want to resist this oppression, and they resort to violence. So there are many philosophers who have justified emancipatory violence, like uh, Jean-Paul Sartre, Walter Benjamin, and Franz Fanon. So I would like to have your views on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagaji. So this structural violence is not a new one. It is coming from the hoary past also. At the time of the Buddha also, there was a structural uh, violence, or you can say divisions in the caste system. And that is why Buddha also says that Chattaro Varna Samsama Honti, that all Varnas are equal. No one is superior or inferior. And he talks about that how imbalance in the society can be taken, or how imbalance in the harmony can be also achieved. And for that, he says that all people are equal. No one is inferior or superior. Whosoever thinks that one is superior or one is inferior, he is engrossed with the papakam ditikatam, that is engrossed with the evils also. And he talks that there is no any, you can say, caste system. They all are equal. So in that way, we can remove this structural violence, and that is why at that time also there were structural violence, whether it is a boundary or a boundaryless violence, but there were. But Buddha talks about it, that how we can remove these structural violence also. And he talks about this whenever he talks about the boundaries also, Rohini River, he talks about that how it can be removed. And he talks about the Dasa Raj Dharma, or the duty of a king, that how the king can follow all these things. So we can follow these things, and then we can remove our structural oppression or the violence also. In that way, it can be done. Regarding this oppressed, you are talking at that time also, Buddha, there were, Buddha talks about the oppressed class, but he gives the higher stages to a barber also. And he was given to compile all the teachings of the Buddha Upali. So he was very much conscious about the persons who were outcast. They were Chandalas and others. And he says that these are equal, not to, and he gave equal status to them also. So it is depends upon the how our social thinkers talk about it, and how we are applying these things in our day-to-day life. So thank you. Anyone?
More questions? Okay. So now we can move on to our next speaker, Professor Ajay Verma from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Department of Philosophy. He is also a very good friend of mine, and we have known each other for, I think, more than 25 years, from the time that we were still researcher scholars. And today he will be joining us online. So I hope he's already yes. So hello Ajay, and you are invited to kindly present your lecture. You have approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Over to you. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself, Ajay. Can you hear me, Ajay? Rejoin. We are not getting your audio.
नहीं वहां से माइक में यहाँ से am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for this technical glitch at the last moment. Actually, something at the last moment went wrong with my computer, and I'm extremely sorry for that. Because we are already short of time, so I'm using my audio through my phone, and I am using my video through my computer. I can only hope that I don't receive a call while I'm using the audio through the. So puts me into a slightly precarious situation. But let me begin anyway. Let me begin, by thanking the organizers. Rahul Moria has been, constantly in touch. Also, sort of, let me express my happiness that I'm in the midst of sort of great scholars like Professor Pradhan, Professor Nirmala Chakravarti, Professor Rakesh Chandra, and my colleagues, Professor Ramani Sen, Professor Bhaskarjit. And of course, I'm so delighted that my chair my session, is being chaired by Professor Jha, who, as he just mentioned, has been a long time friend, and we have always sort of I was a junior, at university with him, and we have been ever since always looked up to him for any advice, for anything, like sort of if we are stuck somewhere in Indian philosophy. So like, I mean, it's always a phone call away, and we can always clarify our doubts. Now, that said, let me begin. As a matter of fact, I'd written a few pages, but given the paucity of time, I think a little bit difficult to first read from there and then like put it together, into a kind of thematic sort of unity of thoughts. So let me just sort of like talk about what I had in mind when I proposed this topic. So the main idea that I want to propound here is. That when we think of Jainism, the two ideas that immediately pop up ahead are Syadvad and Nikantvad. These are the most talked about ideas in Jainism. And basically, these refer to the metaphysical sort of side, or ontological side, and epistemological sort of side of Jainism. What my agenda for today's talk is that something we generally tend to overlook is that after all, there's been this traditional division between Orthodox and heterodox schools, and Jainism, have been always sort of. Have been alongside Buddhists and Charvakas in the heterodox camps. Of course, this bifurcation has been challenged by quite a few scholars in the recent times. But I'm personally of the opinion that it exists for a reason. We wouldn't want to go into like, I mean, sort of maybe some of the cultural reasons, but from the point of view of philosophy of language, I think there is, I mean, this kind of division between orthodox and heterodox does make some good sense. And from that point of view, what I want to emphasize upon is that Jainas, when they propound certain kind of sort of I mean, philosophy of judgments or whichever we may want to call it, sort of as they call it Nayavad. So there are sort of I mean, there are reasons behind it. And though when it comes to philosophy of language, Jainism, I mean, Jaina philosophers are considered mostly, as minor players. So if we sort of, whenever we talk about classical Indian philosophy of language, Jainas, hardly come into the picture. But I'm, just trying to sort of like, I mean, of course it's an area of research, and sort of I'm also proposing here by and kind of a course of research, an agenda for research. So I'm not quite sure how they would participate if there were to be a debate on sort of I mean, say for example Mimamsa, on language, and for that matter grammarians on language. But if there were to be one, then sort of like let's look at what kind of sort of philosophical views that come forth. Say, for example, from the grammarian side, from the, say, for example, Bhartrhari, who propounds a absolutism of sorts, and what could be more importantly, because you know in both the sort of, as far as both these schools are concerned, especially the Jains and the Buddhists, ethical concerns are at the core of these philosophies. So it's hard to kind of talk about their epistemology or their metaphysics, keeping it apart from their ethical concerns. So, if you look at, so, and before I go on to talk about what Jaina philosophy, of language, if there, so like, if there is one, were to be about, let me first, like, try and understand what it is certainly not. So in that regard, if we look at, say, for example, verbal absolutism of Bhartrhari's kind, then we find that Bhartrhari identifies, he like in the very first sort of verse of his magnum opus Vakyapadya, he says that both the world and the word originate and are coextensive and coterminous for that matter, from the same source, which is like variously defined as Shabdatvam, Shabda Brahman, and so on and so forth. So, the basic idea there is that consciousness, there is no part of consciousness which is not linguisticized. There is nothing inside, like there's no portion of our consciousness which is not, so to speak, which falls outside of language. And uh, the limits of world, if I were to repeat Wittgenstein, are, the limits of language are the limits of world. So, but it doesn't stop here, because there is also another side to it. If we look at like sort of, I mean, overall, of course, there are sort of major conflict of opinion. If we say, for example, look at Prabhakar Mimamsakas and Bhartrhari, though they seem to be very close to each other, where as far as their philosophy of language is concerned, but yet there are major differences. But if we look at the overall concern, or overall, I mean, like something that seems to be a kind of sort of I mean overlap between the two is that there is an attempt to close the gaps for interpretation. So the basic idea there is that Vedas are storehouse of knowledge, and Bhartrhari says it in as many words in the very first few verses of Vakyapadya. And the knowledge therein is, like sort of course, encoded in words. And those words, so to speak, like cannot be interpreted this way or that way, because of the nature of truth embedded therein. So the idea overall is that, like those words are not only expressive of truth, but they encode the truth within them. And if you want to leave any gap between the words, then you have a role to play. And that for Bhartrhari, and for that matter, Prabhakar Mimamsaka also, would be tantamount to some kind of violation. I mean, they wouldn't say it in as many words, but there'll be a kind of there'll be tantamount to some kind of sort of violation of the absolute authority of the Vedic word. So in order to sort of like, I mean, and of course, we also cannot forget the Ekvakyata Siddhant that both Bhartrhari and Mimamsakas, would adhere to, where basically sort of the entire Vedic literature uh, is viewed as one single sentence. So basically, like the truth embedded therein is supposedly like unitary in thought. There are no gaps, there are no like sort of fissures, there are no fragments to it. So you don't have to pick up such kind of sort of embedded truth in bits and pieces. You sort of just know it in whole. So that's basically what the idea is. And the ethical sort of implications of it are that uh, when you are looking for an ethical imperative, then you don't need to go outside of the text at all. So factual matters don't even come into consideration. So like I'm saying, for example, Prabhakaras, go as far as like I mean, as this. I mean, they go as far as saying this, that there are no descriptive sentences in the Vedas. So like all the descriptive sentences in the Vedas are somehow interpreted by them in such a way that they are supposedly sort of, I mean, they kind of become imperative in nature. So there is a verse which states that Varna's tears were like shown like silver. So their interpretation would be that basically it's a prescriptive sentence which states that one should never offer silver in yajna. So for them, they're like, I mean, Vedas are not about statement of truth in the world. These are statements about what to do, as expressed in the very first verse of Mimamsa Sutra, Athato Dharma Jigyasa. Vedas are reply to Dharma Jigyasa. Uh, they are reply to our inquiry into the nature of dharma, into the nature of duty. And all the empirical contingencies don't play out, at least for the grammarian like Bhartrhari, who also, by the way, has a soteriological program attached to the study of grammar, which he states right in the beginning, in the first few sort of verses of Vakipadya. And of course, same goes for the Mimamsakas. So, the point here is that if we were to, broadly define the ethics, as ethical implications of, the philosophical views of grammarians, which basically stem forth from their philosophy of language, and for that matter, the Mimamsakas. Uh, if I were to kind of bring in some ideas, some concepts, like some tools for understanding from the Western side, I believe they could be viewed as internalists. So for them, uh, ethical judgments, don't require anything outside of themselves in order to, create a kind of moral imperative for you. So there's like sort of one of the main ideas that I wanted to kind of present. I mean, of course, it's just exposition. I'm not, making presenting a thesis here. But like of course, somebody might argue that Naiyayikas and Bhattas, for that matter, through their different takes, seem to be already, engaging in kind of in challenging such kind of view. So their view would be that. As opposed to Akhanda Paksha of Bhartrihari, their view is that words do have a meaning of their own, and given certain conditions, like in parity with their theory of causation, given certain conditions which, when fulfilled, immediately the effect, which is the meaning, would come to the fore. And Bhattas, sort of take a different route away from Prabhakaras when they bring in, the idea of Arthapatti and Akshepa. So if there are there is apparently the apparent kind of a gap between the two sentences in the Vedas, uh, the reader has an has an interpretive role to play. So, the reader could, sort of make an arthapatti, could make a postulation such that that gap is filled. So, but the main thing to understand over there is, and this is where Jaina's metaphysics would also come in, is that the worldview, as proposed by Naiyayikas, and for that matter, Bhattas as well, is is of a world which is definite in nature. So chairs are chairs, tables are tables, trees are trees, cows are cows. That is because there is a universal inhering in them, and that universal sort of defines, is definitive of whatness of these things. And once the universal is known, then you know the object in its entirety. You know the object as it actually is. So, and this is where like their like worldview, which is pretty much we all know that Nayayikas also believe that the structure of language is at parity with the actual structure in the world. So the structure of the world is reflected in the structure of language. So there is, so to speak, almost one-to-one correspondence, and that is like further in correspondence with the structure of knowledge. So these three things are at complete sort of congruence with each other. So the world has a definite structure to it, and this is what would be expressed through words. And they also believes that the Vedic words have certain kind of absolute authority because they are the words of God. For Mimamskas, the reason is slightly different. We all know they believe that Vedas are apaurusheic. They don't have an author, but those are kind of minor things. What I sort of like, the overall point that I'm trying to sort of press upon here is that like if the structure of the world is reflected as it is in language, and more importantly, like, and the main opponent in this debate would be more of the grammarian and the Prabhakaras, who would argue that there is some kind of absolutist absolute authority that we must ascribe to the Vedic corpus, where you don't have any interpretative role at all. So at least in Nyaya epistemology, at least, you sort of Noah is there, at least to cognize the universal in. So there are certain contingencies involved. There is, some kind of empirical participation. But that could be pretty well discounted. It seems. So it seems. I'm not stating that it is the case. So it seems in the grammarian and Prabhakar Mimamsaka tradition. Now, if you understand that, and if you also understand along with this, that for this reason, their ethical concerns, their ethical position, if we were to construct one, would correspond to some kind of internalism, as sort of, as it has eventually come to be known, where empirical contingencies could pretty well be discounted. We don't need to take them into consideration, as it seems, especially as far as Akhandava Paksha of Bhartrhari is concerned, or for that matter, Prabhakaras, who also argue that word does not have a meaning, so to speak, in itself. It comes to have a meaning in a sentence. And Ek Vakyata Siddhant, sort of presses that point, presses that point further. Now, Jainas, uh, e- I'm not really sure because like I mean, whether they would they are stating it in as many words, though sort of like I mean I get reminded of my university days. So we used to study Syadvad Manjari, and there are some passages there which could be interpreted in this fashion. But like I'm broadly speaking, what I'm trying to argue here is that Syadvad and Anikantvad, though it seems to like pertain to metaphysics of the Jainas and their corresponding epistemological position, has important implications from the point of view of like the ethical concerns that form the core of their philosophy. So if we look at the Nayavad, the idea the idea over there is that, or for that matter Syadvad, that any statement that we make is perspectival in nature and sort of like yesterday I attended Professor Nirmal Chakravarti's talk, and it was like really kind of very well structured and masterful presentation. So there he stated and called them, like I mean, some kind of base propositions. So the idea over there is that in order to kind of present, some like I mean, in order to emphasize upon the parts, one has to take, like this kind of. I mean, one possibility is that we think of prepositions as having some kind of truth, but only contingently. So these empirical contingencies are being taken into consideration, and if we look at their corresponding position on logic, and there is a like, and again, as I began, I'm not really sure whether we could have a philosophy of language from the Jainas overall position, but they definitely have a take on logic, as apparently came out from Professor Chakravarti's presentation also yesterday. So the overall idea over there is that on the one hand, if you look at Buddhists, their idea is that they would want to attack the very idea of the universal. So there's nothing like complete knowledge. There is nothing like the whole truth. There is nothing like truth, so to speak, with some kind of a capital T for them. So they would reduce the world also to a void. So the idea of judgment wouldn't even, so to speak, arise. Forget about the relative nature of it, or and so on and so forth. And that, of course, bring would make them open to the charge of skepticism. And very importantly, then, the pursuit of philosophy would be seriously jeopardized. I mean, and yesterday, if I remember it correctly, Professor Chakravarti also mentioned, Russell's problem of philosophy. And in the last chapter of that book, he presents his idea of philosophy. And he sort of he says that even though sort of like, more we know, more of horizon gets opened up, but skepticism is not something that he would be content with. And this is where I believe, in question to some kind of dogmatism, in response to some kind of internalism that comes forth from Mimamskas and grammarian position, their reply could be overall detrimental to the pursuit of philosophy, as especially like, as defined by Bertrand Russell. Whereas, if we look at Jaina's position in this regard, they keep this possibility open. So for them, vertically, the object is, so to speak, has infinite aspects to itself. And what is very interesting is that even though it has infinite aspects, they that infinity is not, cannot be like converted into impossibility. So even though it is considered to be infinite, they also believe that it is possible to know an object along with its infinite aspects, along with its infinite possibilities. And from the point of view of language, their idea is that uh, our logic, in keeping with many facets of infinite facets that an object comes along with. So therefore, our logical approach has to be modal in nature, and accordingly, sort of, we should state the relative nature of our statements while we are making them. Also, very interestingly here, I'll briefly touch upon another sort of issue, which is that of their accepting the modality of vyaktam. So their idea is something could be indescribable, and this indescribability, I believe, is very different from the kind of indescribability that Shankara talks about, because he also sort of his philosophy is also about some kind of absolutism, whereas Jainas, through their Nayavad and through their sort of by showing the possibility of different showing that judgments are only relatively true. Uh, Somehow, like sort of, so to speak, if you allow me to put it this way, they fragmentize, the reality, even if it is infinite in nature, and their pursuit, and allow the possibility of a pursuit of philosophy that is very much in keeping with Bertrand Russell, that as we know more, as we open up our horizons, there will be more and more to know, and there's always a possibility to know it fully. So my overall statement here, though it may seem to be too little, to express, is that probably Jaina philosophy is probably the only one which keeps the pursuit of philosophy in this Russellian sense alive. I believe that the Shunyavadins' approach to refutation of dogmatism would not quite allow it. Whereas Jainas, view very much sort of through their different sort of philosophy of Syadvad and Nikantvad. I'm sorry, I don't sort of I don't think I have more time. Otherwise, I could have gone a little more in detail about the Jainas philosophy. So this was my overall kind of sort of statement about Jaina's philosophy, and also, of course, the concomitant like ethics that would be coming forth from there. So, like I mean, sort of uh, the seeing the truth of every position, rather than I mean, taking it as a complete kind of keeping it in a binary opposite to yours. So I think, let me not make chairperson's job more difficult. And since the next presentation is already up for you, so I think I should stop here. I hope I haven't exceeded the time limit too much. So I thank Professor Jha for chairing the session, and it's such a delight to see you. And I regret not being in person over there. Though I had booked my ticket, but I had to I just couldn't come.
We can have a few questions
Yeah.
if
So thank you. Thank you so much.
anyone. Yeah, Professor Pradhan.
Hi, Professor Burma. I am Pradhan here.
Okay.
Can you hear
I cannot hear you very well. Yeah. Hello. Hello.
So, Professor Burma, it was very nice to listen to you. Uh, one question is regarding the statement that you made that for the grammarians,
I cannot hear you very
consciousness
well.
is verbalized. All
Sorry, sir. I
consciousness.
cannot hear you very well. I don't know what the reason is.
Oh,
Let me try to increase the
I
volume
think
here.
there is some problem in the system.
And now I can hear you. Now I can hear you. Sir, thank you. Thank you.
Now, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you now.
So,
Thank you.
you made reference to the grammarian position that all consciousness is linguisticized.
Yes.
Now, if that is so, how can they counter the possibility of pre-verbal consciousness of the children and the animals? So this is one question which I think you can answer from the grammarian's point of view. The other question is about the Jaina point of view. Each statement, if according to Jainism, is true, then the question is, are they collectively true? Therefore, they will be, each of them will be true on its own and therefore absolutely true. Or if it is not absolute truth, each position has to admit some partial truth. So the question will arise whether there is a greater truth, a truth with a capital T, to which you also refer. So in any case, Jainism is not a relativism. It will be, as we all know, is a realism, and perhaps I will say it is an absolute realism, because there is a reality which has multiple dimensions. So it is not a reality which is fragmentalized, which you pointed out. It is not fragmentalized. Only our views are fragmentalized. Our views are different, but the reality must be one, and that is absolute. So your take on this, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. Well, your first question, was particularly very interesting. Yeah, one would wonder what about children. As a matter of fact, this question is taken up by Bhattacharya very interestingly. He does talk about it, and he says that. Children also have the linguistic capacity. Their consciousness is also linguisticized, but they do not have the mechanism of externalizing it. So his way of saying it is that, I mean, we all know the three stages, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari. So they have, so to speak, a linguisticized consciousness. And like I mean, his way of putting it is that they do breathe in. And since it is only through, like I mean, sort of, I mean, through speaking that we that we are able to express ourselves. So they are able to not articulate their breathing. So the vicary level is something, initially is missing in them. So, like, I mean, his manner of speaking is that sort of, they are not able to articulate their breathing such that, you know, like there would be any expression forthcoming. So, but of course, if he admits that the consciousness is not linguisticized, I mean, there'll be a lot that he'll have to give up. So that's one. Yeah. Your second question, of course, like I mean, I when I was talking about so to speak fragmentization, I was not referring to their view of reality at all. Of course, as you very rightly pointed out. So like I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying over there. It's just that we'll have to. I mean, their take on the issue is that, and of course, I also agree with you on this that though. I mean, like any textbook, popular textbooks, we may read. Their, like I mean, their philosophy is kind of equivocated with relativism, and I'm very much, like I mean, sort of in agreement with you over this. We cannot be sure whether this term should apply to them, given their metaphysics, given like I mean. Given the fact that they believe that there is a possibility of keval jnana, there is possibility of having complete knowledge of things, and sort of I mean enough was like sort of I mean said in Professor Nirmala Chakravarti's presentation regarding this. So yeah, so like I mean of course I mean I agree with you on that. The fragmentation part is only regarding the language, and this is where this is what would bring them into the heterodox camp, and this is why like I mean I contextualized it my presentation within that debate, starting from there. So like I mean they present a kind of, so to speak, a philosophy of language which very well challenges the verbal absolutism, and also is able to kind of challenge the ethical kind of internalist position therein, and at the same time like keep the possibility of complete knowledge, which is very dear to grammarians, also alive at the same time, and also for that matter the possibility of I mean the kind of the pursuit of knowledge along with that. So yeah, so sort of I like I mean of course it was not a reply, I mean it was just like small sort of I mean possible response to your question.
Sir, I am audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, actually, what Professor Pradhan was asking related to the children consciousness, I want to ask about us when we are reaching to the idea of the moksha or illumination. We are no need anymore of the idea of the language, but still we are having the idea of consciousness. The consciousness is still there, but we no talk anymore. We no need to talk anymore. What about that consciousness?
Okay. Like, thanks for your question. Not needing to talk anymore is, a very different thing. I mean, that doesn't bring into the question, the like, I mean, the indescribable nature of reality, and sort of like, of course, I couldn't talk much on the idea of indescribability as Jainas define it, because their idea of indescribability is in complete contrast to the Advaita kind. So there they would view it as a kind of modality, like negation. They like don't believe in bipolar kind of logic. So they, for them, it's a modality, is not, and avakyam, indescribable. So like, I mean, if you say that when one has reached a particular sort of moksha, stage of moksha, one doesn't need to speak, that hardly kind of challenge, for that matter, even Bhartari's position. All he's saying is that whatever, like, we know is always sort of linguisticized, whether in internal or external way. I mean, like, knowledge is also, our knowledge is also always verbal in nature. That is a position that grammarians can't give up, being grammarians, as they are. So, because, like, I mean, that is a position they cannot give up. So yeah. So I don't know, I mean, whether that this actually answers your question, but I mean, Advaitins may hold indescribability in a different sense, but like, that's not true of Mimamsa position, or for that matter, grammarian's position.
Thank you so much, Ajay, for your lucid lecture and handling of the difficult questions coming from two extremes. I would say, one referring to the mock situation, one another referring to the. Yeah, one more question. We have. Okay, who's there? Someone wants to ask. Okay, sir, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Ask your question. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks for beautiful presentation. I have two, three questions, but are confined to one. Regarding your position on the independent ethical status, that ethics is independent of the world. If we talk of meta ethics, that the judgment that we go for non-cognitive, non-descriptive approach, then one can understand. But at the ethical level, if ethics is independent of the world, then if it is there in Mansaras or in, but then how they will put hermeneutics there? Why is the need of hermeneutics there if the world is not needed there in ethical judgment? Then why will there need of hermeneutics? Yeah, just clarifications of just thank you.
Thanks for your question. As a matter of fact, like, I mean, if we look at the history of hermeneutics, like, I mean, for that matter, even in the West, I mean, these positions have always existed. Say, for example, like, I mean, one of the earlier positions, I mean, proposed by, among others, also Augustine, is that there is some kind of an embedded truth, and if there is any role for you as a reader, there, then, like, the only role for you is to let the revelation come to you. And these are the ideas, like, I'm sort of presented by the words like smriti, shruti, and so on. So the idea there is that of revelation, as Schleiermacher and Renke sort of would say, extinguishing yourself. The idea there is that you don't have any individual interpretative role to play. You'll have to just kind of get that one single kind of a truth from the Vedas. And this is exactly the point which brings them into conflict with the heterodox systems. Majorly among them, since the Charvakas literature is not sort of so much available, so majorly among them, the Buddhists and the Jainas. So Buddhists would point, would challenge the very idea where that language has anything to do, for that matter, with the world. So for them, if meaning in generating capacity of language were to be explained, then we can just confine ourselves to the realm of language alone. So there, idea of apohavad, uh, language can create meaning through internal mechanism of differentia. The entire linguistic system is sustained by differentia, not through reference, the system of reference outside of itself. So I mean, and of course, the interpretative role that would be assigned to the reader in such kind of situation would be very different. So you have an individual kind of sort of way of trying to make sense of what you're dealing with. I mean, Buddha, we have and we have sort of very learned scholar of Buddhist philosophy. I mean, I'm delighted that Professor Bimalendra Kumar is one of the co-panelists. So he would, also kind of point this out to you that that famous saying of the Buddha, Attadipo Bhava. So, like, be a light to yourself. Buddha was never kind of. I mean, he wanted to be accepted. He wanted his word to be accepted only through individual examination. So that kind of interpretative role can only be assigned within Jainas and Buddhist position. And of course, I didn't get much time to sort of like further elaborate upon the Jainas position therein. And of course, an interpretative role that you have within the verbal absolutism kind of tradition is very different. I don't know, whether sort of that is a sufficient response to your query. But thanks for asking this.
Thank you, Ajay. Thanks so much. So now we can move on to our next speaker.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I felt very confident.
So our next speaker is Dr. Shipra Dikshit, and I'm proud to say that she has been a student of this department, did her MA from here, and of course after that she did her PhD from JNU and postdoctoral from IIT Kanpur. Now she is engaged in teaching at KCS Lucknow. So I invite her to present her paper, Dr. Shipra Dikshit.
Good afternoon, Pranam, Gurujan, or my dear seniors, my juniors, my teachers, my colleagues, and of course, my teachers from JNU are also here. I'm truly privileged to stand in front of you, and I convey my gratitude to Rahul sir for inviting me here. So I don't have so much words and I don't have that much of language, verbal language, to express my gratitude and thankfulness to be here. But you can very well understand my body language, my happiness through my body language. This is how we express ourselves without saying something. The true task, or we can say the task of language, we have been discussing the task of language since last 2 days. So I'm not the expertise of language and philosophy of mind and analytic philosophy, but I can very well say that the true task of philosophy and true task of language is to convey your message to your audience. And I hope I can convey my message through my language or through my body language. So, I'm going to speak on gendering through worldview and language, an examination of Prakriti through Beauvoir's lens, Simone de Beauvoir's lens. So don't interpret this as gender studies or something like that. I'm taking this uh, gender issue as an example to only convey the role of language in making the gender, right? So we can say that the language is said to be mirror of mind and has been used as a content of doing gender. We all know that Chomsky said this. We use languages to certain things, to certain norms, to certain culture, to certain things, and this language says something about our everydayness, about our life, and about our experiences towards the world view. It's like if our mind, if our mind is uh, uh, thinking something, or if we have some thought, and if we cannot communicate in language, or we cannot uh, describe the things around the world in language, the things are there outside of mind. So what's your name? You have asked that question. Yeah, yeah. Francis has asked the question to my sir Ajay Verma sir, that uh, uh, how this that excuse me, that language is not there but consciousness is there, right? And how can we talk with consciousness, right? This kind of thing. So uh, the answer you can find in existential philosophy, I must say, because all our experiences can define, and all this outer world can be defined through our experiences, through our empirical knowledge, and through the engagement with the world. So this is what I'm going to discuss here: the role of language in our existential life, in our day-to-day life. Then we'll discuss the examining language in Sankhya Karika. I'm going to discuss the idea of Prakriti and Purusha, and how this dualism of Prakriti and Purusha is uh, very well conveyed, the duality of gendered body. It's the dualism about mind body, or matter and spirit, but it is conveying the idea of duality of male and female. Then we'll discuss the creation of gendered principle through language, and then, of course, examining Prakriti through Simone de Beauvoir's lens. Now, what is the role of language? Language is the means of communication. No one can evade the utility of language. In philosophical domain, language has been used as a content of doing philosophy. We all know that. And we use language to refer things, to mean things, to say things about the world, which we claim to be true. The things are true. And language, in dealing with, refers to the world, and it has meaning, and it says something true about the world. That means if we describe this, guys, or we describe this mic, uh, mic itself is saying true about itself. If I am not describing the use of mic in language, we already know that the use of mic, the use of this pen, the use of pen is for writing, and pen is saying this without describing, without my description. You know that pen is for writing. So this these things in the outer world is itself describing, itself communicating with ourselves. This is the role of language, and it must be the role of language to convey itself. So now, language is relevant to ontology. That means language can reach up to reality. For all the studies, language is the means of communication, a system of marks and sounds which we use to convey thoughts and describe the world. And if we want to define reality in terms of the things that compose our world, there may be a conceivable relation between language and reality. But language does not enter into the constitution of being. That means language cannot enter into the constitution of this pen. Pen will be pen if the language is not entering into describing this pen. It remains the pen. The being of the table, like this being of this dice or being of this table or mic is independent of its linguistic expression. That means the world we have seen is designated by the reality. Now, reality can be broadly classified into two classes: the empirical or ordinary sense and the metaphysical term. Unlike the metaphysical concept of reality, in empirical sense, we conceive reality in terms of existence. In this sense, reality includes real things, facts, events, and real persons. In empirical sense, when we discuss about the reality of your own existence, it is the kind of engagement with the table, with the pen, with the book, with the projector. This is also the reality, the empirical reality, right? So language used by persons to communicate being an important part of this reality. Language, according to existentialist, is the house of being. Heidegger says that. And it is the locus and vehicle of the arrival, that is the self-revelation of being itself. Now, I'm not going to uh, describe in detail the use of language. Come to the point, examining language in Sankhya Karika. Sankhya Karika is the oldest school of Indian philosophy, and in account of Sankhya philosophy, our inquiry is based upon language used in Sankhya Karika to explain the nature and task of Prakriti and Purusha. And then how we examine the idea of Prakriti through Boas. Boas, woman, and Prakriti has some common elements regarding the subordination due to societal norms, which is to be examined in this paper. So, mind-body dualism in of Sankhya Karika, where material body is Prakriti and Purusha is consciousness, which is mental body. And it is focused here that Purusha get attached to Prakriti and wrongly interpreted himself into pleasure and pain. He seeks liberation from the cycle of birth and death. This is the first step towards liberation, right? And the moment he comes to realize that he is liberated from the beginning itself and Prakriti is chained, she is the sufferer. Purusha frees himself with the Prakriti and destruction occurs. All the gunas come again into equilibrium, and developing the concept of liberation from pleasure and pain that is beyond Purusha, we can deduce that in the ancient society, despite being interdependent, male and female never be treated equally. They lacked reciprocity. So we all know that Prakriti and Purusha both are two independent reality. They are principle. They are not ontological entities. But the dualism itself is not equal. The dualism of matter and mind, it is not reciprocal. The material body is Prakriti. Uh, Likewise, in Simone de Beauvoir's woman or in our everyday woman is always compared with the matter or material body, or she is always seen as the body only, embodied self. And Purusha, the word itself is problematic. The word Purusha is known as consciousness. He is the spirit. And for the author of Sankhya philosophy, may, you know, we don't know what he has in his mind, but he might uh, uh, use some other word for spirit. He might be used, but intentionally he used the word Purusha to define the this dualism, very unequal, to define that there is no reciprocal dualism between Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is being treated as gendered body there. Now, major problematic of this presentation is to deal with this duality that is articulated as a meta-spirit dualism, but often being treated as male-female duality. Western philosophies classified realities into mind and matter. Uh, as you know, Descartes' philosophy, uh, mind and matter duality is there. And he says that embodied mind is there, but disembodied mind is also possible. There is an article by Kasim Kasam where he claimed that your disembodied mind is uh, possible. That means self is equated with the mind only, not body. And there, mind-body dualism is also not equal. Body is always being marginalized. Body cannot be equated with the self. Self is mind. So here, um, this there is no biological or machinery, or there is no attempt to pair them as masculine and feminine. But if we carefully notice, in Indian context, there exists a dichotomy, like Brahma Maya dichotomy, Shiva Shakti and Prakriti Purush, where we find the personification of the reals, which is unique. Okay. So I claim that gendering in Sankhyakarika is based on cosmological dualism rather than sexual differentiation. There is no personification. There is no claim about male and female, but the gendering in Sankhyakarika is expressing itself as gendered body. Prakriti is gendered body without saying anything. That is the use of language. That is the role of language, to convey what they want to convey, right? So describe the existence of the world as gradual processes starts with the conjecture of Prakriti and Purusha. During the splendid act of conjecture, Prakriti is supposed to move with the supremacy of Purusha. So there is Karika 21. We find that this analogy of blind and lame, you must have heard about that. Blind, lame together associates to create universe where Prakriti is blind and Purusha is lame. Why Prakriti is blind there? Because he wants to convey that Prakriti is unconscious. The unconsciousness of Prakriti is being described by her blindness. And Purusha, who is consciousness, is the, is the conscious entity, is the spirit, is the soul, and he is the whole soul. He is the supreme soul who will give advice, who is conducting everything, and Prakriti is only the doer. She doesn't have any decision-making authority. Now again, relationship between Prakriti and Purusha is neither personalistic nor corporeal, rather it is cosmological. As stated by D.B. Chattopadhyay, he says, the Pradhan being real and the visible world being a real effect of the Pradhan. So Pradhan is, etymologically Pradhan is masculine gender, but uh, if we look at the saying with that uh, the Pradhan being real and the visible world being a real effect, that means Pradhan is real, that Prakriti. Pradhan is used for Prakriti. If Prakriti is real and her evolutes, the Parinam is real, how can be the Prakriti be unconscious? That means the evolutes must be unconscious. There should not be any consciousness in the evolutes of Prakriti, but there is. That means there is no need of Purusha to enter into the life of Prakriti and disturb this equilibrium. Prakriti is okay. Prakriti is independent to create this universe alone. So, Sankhya explains this process of becoming through Prakriti in its background and not through worldly being. It is suggested that Prakriti is everything else besides being consciousness, which deals with the phenomenal world. We can assume Prakriti as a material body and Purusha as a soul element. Now, Sankhya philosophy, without explaining the existence of bodily being, has proved the personification of Prakriti and Purusha. How? There are some analogies and there are some words and terms used in Sankhya Karika to define the bodily existence of Prakriti. So, Prakriti is the first cause of the universe. Prakriti is eternal, uncaused, and productive, but not produced. She has been allocated with many names and symbols like Ahetumat, Nityam, Vyapi, Nishkriyam, Alingam, Swatantram, Avyaktam, Trigunam, Aviveki, Vishaya, Achetanam, and Prasavdharmi. Likewise, Karika 59 describes her as Nartakitvam, means dancing girl, and Karika 61 explains Prakriti Purusha as relaxed couple. Prakriti here is compared with the shy woman. Maybe this Karika describes the, the last time of the couple, the old age couple, where they feel relaxed and Prakriti is of no use. The woman is of no use in her because she finds herself, she finds her liberation, and she finds everything in her child because she has been described as unproductive, uncreative. So she finds her creation in her, uh, you know, in her child. And in the old age, when child leaves her, she feels that she is meaningless, you know, and because she she has the only product, she has the only creation of that child. She is not productive and she has not created anything because she is unconscious for Sankhya philosophy. Likewise, in um, Simone de Beauvoir's, woman is also treated as useless or unconscious, where she is, suppressed or she is being subordinated by the society or societal norms. Now, term Purusha. Look at the term Purusha. Purusha stood up to indicate male. Purusha is also seer, enjoyer, and controller of the world. Purusha is said to be Atriguna, Viveki, Chetana, Aprasavdharmi, Kevali, Drashta, and Akarta. That means Purusha is Akarta, but he is the authority. See, he is not a doer, but he is the authority. Now, Karika third defines Purusha as na prakriti, na vikriti. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So, notion of liberation takes place through the Purusha realization that he is separate from Prakriti. Purusha must detach himself from his mistaken identification with Prakriti. So, lacking time, just I want to give some Beauvoir's examination. Simone de Beauvoir has rejected the biological inferiority. For her, gender is being habituated in certain norms and manner. She writes, like, we can never describe any human condition as inevitable, as inscribed in nature. What is often called the eternal feminine, the behavior and character which seem to distinguish women and men, is humanly created and thus alterable. Now, likewise, Prakriti, woman is also imposed to become subordinate. Like Prakriti, Beauvoir's woman looks in her immanence. She has nothing to do with her own purpose and desires. She lacks freedom to join some creative projects. as Prakriti can't stop creation unless every Purusha get released in Sankhya Karika, Prakriti made independent, yet she lacks freedom. So, I think uh, this examination through Bova's point of view of Prakriti, uh, you get this point, and questions are welcome if you have any. Thank you.
Well, we are actually acutely running short of time. So, do we have any questions? I'll just take one question. And I am seeing only one hand raised also. So there is no problem for me. You can ask your question, but be brief.
About the duality between male and female by defining the idea of Prakriti and Purush. Actually, I think this idea of male and female is just a worldly thing, and Prakriti and Purush are not just worldly. If we are watching ourselves, the woman, we are not only the matter, no? We are also having the consciousness. And on the opposite side, if we are watching the male animals, they're male and still they not have consciousness. And if we are watching the representation of Prakriti and Purush by Hinduism, half Lord Shiva, half female, half male, then we can see the difference, no?
I was about to explain this, but due to lack of time, I did not explain this as much. Prakriti and Purusha are principles, but they are cosmological principles. But there are some analogies where uh, Prakriti is said to be Prasavdharmi. The biological womanness is explained by this term, right? Secondly, you are talking about the female animals, there, Ardhanarishwar. So in Ardhanarishwar, the Ardhanarishwar is the half male, half female, but Ardhanarishwar is devoted in the form of Lord Shiva, not Shakti. He said, but what we are doing, this is worldly, worldly norms. The norms, the societal norms we made is we are devoting Shiva in the form of Ardhanarishwar. No, but there is, yeah,
Okay.
that is the point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So, with that, we complete the session of the speakers. I don't have much time. I will just take maybe 1 or 2 minutes to say what is there in my mind and heart, more in my heart, less than in my mind. I think we have had a very fruitful 3 days deliberation on the theme of language, truth, and reality. But I don't know whether it has increased my understanding of these three basic concepts or it has made me more aware of my ignorance of these concepts. But to tell you the truth, of course, I have been a student of philosophy for 3 decades now. Had lot of occasion to read about this, think about this, hear about this. But one thing I must, confess, these three terms, language, truth, and reality, this seems so basic to the entire pursuit of philosophy that you cannot bypass them. At the same time, we must acknowledge and accept that there is no agreement over the connotation of these terms. Leave alone the universal agreement about the meaning and connotation of these terms. We ourselves or any individual oneself does not have a stable understanding of language, reality, and truth over a span of time or over the duration of his intellectual growth. And we have an expert of Wittgenstein here, Professor Pradhan, So the later Wittgenstein has a very, very acute reflection over this matter, as you all know. Whenever we are dealing with language, we are dealing with words and apparently with concepts related with them, there is always a requirement to keep note of the fact that you may be saying the same word, but you may not actually be meaning the same thing. I may have one particular understanding in my mind of the word and the way I think it should be used and it should be understood and appreciated. You may be having an somewhat different and sometimes an entirely different, understanding of these terms: language, truth, reality. And despite that, there seems to be a compulsion to develop a theory, a commonly and universally agreeable theory over these concepts and words, which seems to be a task doomed to fail. It is destined to fail. Because to begin with, there is no objective reality as, language or truth or reality, independent of our ways of understanding it and handling it and talking about it or doing things about it. We are never taught the basic, commonly, universally agreed notion of these three things is never given to us. We have to develop it ourselves in the light of our knowledge and experiences and reflections through time, which of course means that it goes on shifting, varying. And we very easily tend to forget this fact. And that itself is at the root of so many disputes and problems, critiques which are there. I'm not saying we should give up this entire exercise, but this should be very, acutely highlighted as a disclaimer that though we are dealing with these concepts, we are trying to, you know, make it more accurate, as far as possible, commonly agreeable, yet this remains the basic fact. This is the bottom line. So we should never, lose sight of that. Otherwise, we will be moving in the wrong direction. There is a basic subterranean fluidity which is involved in these concepts. So on the surface, it may seem that we are dealing with these three terms, these three concepts. We should all be thinking of the same thing when I say truth or reality or language. But I really suspect whether it is ever this kind. So, I mean, this is not, so I'm not giving, of course, I'm not giving any solution. I'm just underlining and highlighting the footnote disclaimer related to this with theme for your further thought and deliberation. Thank you.
Now we are moving towards the next session. Okay, and now I formally welcome to Professor R.C. Pradhan and Professor Nirmalaya Chakravarti sir and Professor Mehta and Professor Anand Mishra, head of the department, and coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Rahul Maurya, to join us on the dais. Where is he? कहाँ? In the words of Henry Longfellow, great is the art of beginning, but the greater is the art of ending. Everything has beginning, middle, and end. Endings are inevitable, and to end something well helps prepare you for what is next. So we will plan something else next, maybe next year. So we have reached the end of the 3-day international seminar on language, truth, and reality, perspective from analytic and Jaina philosophy. Distinguished guests on and off the dais, dear participants and students, I am Priyanka Mishra, an assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion. I welcome you all to this valedictory program. Before we formally begin, we have a tradition of lighting the lamp on any auspicious occasion. So I would like to invite all the dignitaries on the dais to join us, lighting the lamp and garlanding the founder of this university, Professor Madan Mohan Malviya ji. Hey, you. So now I would like to invite our research scholar, Vikas Pandey, for the recitation of Vedic Mangalacharan.
ॐ यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश प्रणिनोति तस्मै तगुंहदेवात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम्
Thank you, Vikas, for such a beautiful recitation. And now I would like to invite Dr. Anand Jain for Jaina Mangalacharan.
भक्तामरा प्रणत मौलिमणि प्रभाणा मुद्योतकं दलित पापतमो वितानम् सम्यक् प्रणम्य जिनपादयुगं युगादा वालम्बनं भवजले पतितां जनानां यः संस्तुतः सकलवाङ्मयतत्त्वबोध दुद्भूतबोधिपटुभिः सुरलोकनाथैः स्तोत्रैर्जगत्रितयचित्तहरैरुदारैः स्तोष्ये किलाहमपि तं प्रथमं जिनेन्द्रम् स्तोष्ये किलाहमपि तं प्रथमं जिनेन्द्रम्.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. And now I would request, I would like to invite the research scholar from the music department, Kajol and Shreya, for Kulgeet.
मधुर मनोहर अतीव सुंदर ये सर्व वेद्या की राजधानी राजधानी मधुर मनोहर अतीव सुंदर ये सर्व वेद्या की राजधानी राजधानी ये तीनों लोग से न्यारी काशी सुज्ञान धर्म और संतोषी बसी है गंगा के रम्य तट पर ये सर्व विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी नए नहीं है ये पत्थर है विश्वकर्मा का कार्य सुंदर रचे है विद्या के भव्य मंदिर ये सर्वश्रेष्ठी की राजधानी राजधानी यहाँ की है पवित्र शिक्षा की सत्य बीके हरिश्चंद्र थे यहीं पर ये सत्य शिक्षा की राजधानी राजधानी वेद ईश्वर की सत्यवाणी बने जिन्हें पढ़ के ब्रह्म ज्ञानी हे व्यास जी ने रचे यहीं पर ये ब्रह्म विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी वो मुक्ति पद को दिलाने वाले सुधर्म पथ पर चलाने वाले यही फले फूले बुद्ध शंकर ये राज ऋषियों की राजधानी राजधानी सुरम्य धाराए वरुणासी नहाए जिनमें कबीर तुलसी भला हो कविता का क्यों ना कर ये वाग विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी विविध कला अर्थ शास्त्र गायन गणित खनिज और शंख सायन प्रतीचि प्राची का मेल सुंदर ये विश्वविद्या की राजधानी राजधानी ये मालवीय जी की देशभक्ति ये उनका साहस ये उनकी शक्ति ये मालवीय जी की देशभक्ति ये उनका साहस ये उनकी शक्ति प्रकट हुई है नवीन होकर ये कर्मवीरों की राजधानी राजधानी मधुर मनोहर अतीव सुंदर ये सर्व विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी मधुर मनोहर अतीव सुंदर ये सर्व विद्या की राजधानी राजधानी
Thank you so much, Sneha and Kajul. Now I would request our head of the department, Professor Anand Mishra, to felicitate the chair of the program, Professor Nirmalaya Chakravarti. हाँ. Now, I would request Professor M.R. Mehta, former head of this department and chairman of BSJSF, to felicitate Professor R.C. Pradhan. Thank you, sir. Now I request our head of the department, Professor Anand Mishra, for a formal welcome address. Sorry for that. Now I'd like to invite Professor Mehta for a welcome note.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, all the respected delegates from various parts of the country and from abroad, all my respected colleagues, and all dear participants. I welcome you all to this valedictory session of the 3-day international conference. We had a wonderful 3 days time with all of you, and if I say personally, as a student, I learned a lot from this 3 day international conference. Uh, uh, we hope to organize such conferences in future also, and with the kind association and support of our head of the department and from Bhagwan Shyansnath Jain Studies Fund. Uh, as I was telling Dr. Rakesh Chandraji that why not we should plan a full-fledged conference on Jainism first, and then, because I think in these three days conference, it was since it was a combined conference, combined with Jainism and analytical perspectives. So, if we have an independent conference of Jainism first, then we will be having some problems from original text, from original Angas, from Agmas, from Upang, from Ched Sutra we have, from Mool Sutra we have Tatvar Sutra, we have Praman Mimamsa by Hemchandra, we have the works of Sid Sen Divakar, Sanmati Tark and all that. We have Vadidev Suri's Pramana Tatvalok and all that we have. So that is what we were discussing, and Rahul ji's help will be essential in that, because Rahul ji is a wonderful organizer. So with these words, because I know we are in short of time, so once again I welcome you all to this valedictory session of this conference. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Now I request our head of the department for a formal welcome address.
Hari Om. Honorable Professor Nirmalya Chakravarti, chairing the session. Professor R.C. Pradhan, who is going to deliver a valedictory lecture. Professor Mukul Raj Mehta, Chairman Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund BHU. Seminar coordinator Dr. Rahul Moria. Scholars, students, friends, connected online, offline. I welcome you all in this valedictory section of International Conference on Language, Truth and Reality, Perspectives from Analytic and Jain Philosophy, jointly organized by the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University and Bhagwan Shreyansnath Jain Studies Fund BHU. Friends, we had a wonderful conference. All of you would agree with me that this was full success, a wonderful conference. And scholars like R.C. Pradhan and Nirmalya Chakravarti are here present in valedictory session. I, on behalf of the department, extend warm welcome to them. I also welcome Professor R.K. Jha, Professor Bimlen Kumar, Professor C. Dubey, and Professor Manideepa ji, Professor Rakesh Chandra, Professor Prasenjit, and so many other professors who are here connected online. I welcome all these scholars. Friends, this conference was on language, truth, and reality perspectives from analytic and Jain philosophy. We are having a history of more than 100 years of analytic philosophy. And as Akil Bilgrami hinted that in the beginning the focus was on language, then we find that it is shifting towards truth. And nowadays, these philosophers are taking interest in metaphysics, reality, and social and political problems. Though being an outsider, I think that these problems could be well approached by synthetic and holistic approach. And there I think lies the importance of Eastern philosophies, particularly of Jain philosophy. All we know that doctrine of Anikant, Syadvad, and Saptabhangi presents a complete philosophy of language, truth, and reality. So this was my personal view. In fact, so many papers have been presented here in the conference, and I hope in the coming future, Dr. Rahul Maurya would be busy in compiling and editing those papers, and I hope that we soon we shall have some good volumes related on the theme of the conference. I once again welcome all the scholars who are present here, students and friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. And now this is the time to invite Divakar Maurya, a research scholar from our department, to present the report for the entire 3-day seminar.
Thank you, ma'am. So the report is here. The International Conference on Language, Truth and Reality, Perspective from Analytic and Jain Philosophy is sponsored by IOE, that's the Institute of Eminence, and BSJF, Bhagwan Shyam Jain Studies Fund. BHU organized in a seminar hall of the Department of Philosophy and Religion on 28 December 2023. Conference started with the recital of a Vedic Mangalacharan by Vikas Pandey and Jain Mangalacharan by Dr. Anand Jain. Welcome note was delivered by Professor Mukulraj Mehta sir, who is also a chairman of BSJF, and welcome address by Professor Anand Mishra sir, who is the head of the department. Further, the concept note was addressed by Dr. Rahul Kumar More, who is the coordinator of this conference. Keynote address was delivered by Professor Rakesh Chandra of the Lucknow University, and this is to examine this was to examine the issues with the special reference to Locke Russells. After as the session was the inaugural session, and it was chaired by Akil Bilgrami of the Columbia University, he delivered a brief background of the conference. He stated that Jain philosophy has strength and constitutes with the exploration of analytical philosophy. Further, he added that according to Chomsky, communication is an ancillary development and language is not essential for communication. Communication is a primitive stage, and earlier philosophers spoke about language without bringing the concept of mind in the central focus. Afterward, academic session first was organized, and it was chaired by Professor Rakesh Chandra of Lucknow University. In this session, former Professor R.C. Pradhan sir of Hyderabad University presented his paper on the topic Truth, Reality and Reason on the limits of relativism and historicism. His paper was intended to draw the limits of relativism and historicism, the main feature of the modernism to show that there is no way we can dispense with the notion of truth and reason. The next paper was presented by Balram Singh, INADS USA. His topic was truth and ideal, and unknown entity realizable through analytical science. He expressed his thought that the mind by its nature is only analytical, and analysis the analysis of the information fed to it directly from the sensory observation and perception of the mind, which engages the intellect to develop a pattern to determine meaning with experience, knowledge, and contemporary condition. Then the session was closed and academic session 2 was resumed after the lunch, which was chaired by Professor R.C. Pradhan sir of Hyderabad University. In this session, Professor Akil Bilgrami of Columbia University presented his paper uh, titled A Reach of the Objectivity. He figuratively explained when did the convergence begin with the beginning of thought. At some time, one cannot both predict and intend that one is going to do something ethical is practical thing that can be seen in the world. Phenomenology of the language is very rich. We apprehend meaning of the certain symbol or sign because it exists in our mind or depend on some social and contextual background. Afterward, academic session third, which was chaired by Professor Balram Singh, INDAS US, USA. In this session, three papers were presented. First paper was presented by Dr. Meera Chakrabarti of Jain University from Bangalore on the topic Jain philosophy and democratic thinking, a reflection. She explains that the Jain principle deeply rooted in the ancient culture warrant reflection within the framework of modern democracy. And afterwards, second paper in this session was presented by Dr. Manoj Panda sir of Presidency University, Kolkata. His paper was titled Conceptual Scheme, Empirical Content and the Given. He explored the philosophical debate on the relationship between conceptual scheme and empirical content in the context of truth and knowledge. The last paper of this session was entitled Charles Travis and Whether Non-Conceptual is Structured or Not, presented by R. Krishnaswamy of OP Jindal University, Haryana. He explored that John McDowell's recent shift in his perspective on the nature of experience, moving from a propositional to the conceptual structured view influenced by exchange with Charles Travis. And after this, the day one was end, and we reached to the day two, which is 29 December 2023. Academic session 4 was chaired by Professor Prasannajit Biswas of NEHU. In this session, three papers were presented. Paper 1 was presented by Bhakrajit Neo, Bhaskarjit Neo, JNU from JNU. His paper was entitled Vices and Virtues of a Moral Realism and Relativism. In this paper, he shed light on the conflict between moral realism and moral relativism in a philosophical studies. Second paper was presented by Manas Jyoti Deka from Assam. His paper was of title Anekantvad and Syadvad, Imaginary, Symbolic and Real, a Lacanian perspective of a Jain sevenfold prediction. He examined the Jain philosophy of Anekantvad and Syadvad through Lacanian psychoanalytic perspective. It relates Anekantwad's inherent contradiction expressed via sevenfold prediction to Lacanian concept such as object petit and Freudian unconscious process. Third paper of this session was presented by Sanjit Chakraborty, VIT University of VI, from VIT University on language, truth and reality. What do we really know? He stated in his presentation by engaging in a philosophical discourse on the theoretical foundation of language and meaning, focusing on the debate between externalism and internalism. Afterwards, academic session fifth was raised. In this continuation, the academic session fifth was chaired by Professor R.C. Pradhan. In this session, two papers were presented. First paper of this session was presented by Nirmalai Chakraborty, RBU, Kolkata. His paper title was Anekantvad and the Idea of Indefinite, K.C. Bhattacharya's Insight. He discussed Jain Anekantvad and its relation to relativism, emphasizing K.C. Bhattacharya's interpretation, while Jain Anekantvad acknowledges alternative standpoints. It goes beyond minimum relativism. So afterward, the second paper of this session was presented by Prasannajit Biswas, NEHU. Paper was entitled Are truth conditions part of a weak thought in Putnam and in Anekantvad? He explored in this paper the factive relationship between meaning and the truth condition, incorporating Putnam's causal theory of reference and Jain Anekantvad. Afterwards, academic section 6 was started, which was after the lunch, and it was chaired by Dr. Manideepa Sen of JNU. Three papers were presented in this session. First was Would the Thing Exist If the World Does Not by Prashant Kumar from Lakshmibai College, from DU, assistant professor. His paper scrutinized the contemporary ontological assumption, notably Queen's contentions that the world exists as a foundation for metaphysical entities. In his paper on what there is further, Marcus Gabriel challenges to the existence of the world are examined. The second paper was presented by Dr. R.L. Behra sir from our department on the topic Understanding Language is a house of soul, house of being, and eyes of the world. Jainism, Heidegger, and Davidson perspective. His paper was an attempt to explore polysemantics of a house of soul, house of being, and the eyes of world using analytical philosophy of language. Drawing from Jain's philosophy of language is explored as the means for self-expression representing the house of the soul. The third paper of this session was Central Philosophy of Jainism, Ethics or Metaphysics, presented by Dr. Rajan of Azim Premji University. His paper challenged the prevailing emphasis on metaphysics and epistemology in the study of Jain philosophy by asserting that Jainism's central philosophy is fundamentally rooted in ethics, particularly non-violence. He referred B.K. Matilal's assertion that Jainism prioritized metaphysics is critically examined. Now, the academic session 7th was the last session of that day, and this session was chaired by Dr. Nirmale Chakraborty, RBU, Kolkata. In this session, two papers were presented. First was Meaning, Understanding and Interpretation, a relook into Davidson's holism by Manideepa Sen from JNU. This paper dwells into an evolution of the concept of a meaning in 20th century analytical philosophy, particularly through the work of Donald Davidson, influenced by V. Wu O. Queen, uh, departing departing from a traditional view of a meaning as a dyadic relation between language and the world. Davidson explores the intertwined nature of the meaning and understanding. And the last paper was presented on the strange case of natural kind reference, some reflection by Professor Rakesh Chandra sir, Lucknow University. The paper dwells into the discourse surrounding meaning, reference and essences, focusing on the natural kind terms and influential concept of rigid designation introduced by Sol Kripke. So now the day 3, that's today on 30th December 2023. Today in morning at 1000 hours, conference resumed, and the academic session 8 was chaired by Professor R. Rakesh Chandra of Lucknow University. In this session, Dr. Rahul Kumar Maurya, Dr. Saurabh, and Dr. Shilpi, they presented the paper. Rahul sir presented the paper, Why Truth Cannot Be Emancipatory. Through his paper, he tries to understand how Kant's enlightenment was to save the people from getting dominance of thinking, preventing people from dominance of thinking, which rules out any alterations or changes or having no scope for thinking, which leads to conversion to an automata. Further to this, Dr. Saurabh Torodaria of Triple IT Hyderabad from online, he was online, delivered a comparative aspect between Kant and Jainism and also referred Peter Singer and his relevant work in constituting the animals and human relationship that could be helpful in filling the gap in Kant's moral philosophy concerning to questions of animal. The last paper was presented on strange case of natural kind reference, some reflection by, sorry, I'm sorry. So academic session 9 was started, uh, which was headed by Bimlendra Kumar from LBU, Nepal, and he is also a head of the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies in BHU. In this session, paper on the Jain metaphysics was presented by Pradyum Shah Singh sir of BHU. The paper focuses on the foundational sutra of Tatvar Sutra, asserting that the right path, uh, asserting that the right path which need to be acknowledged, that is the right faith, knowledge and conduct leads to emancipation in the Jain philosophy. It explains that right faith is linked to the Jain metaphysics, while right knowledge encompasses both faith and dissentment of right and wrong. The Jain thinkers emphasize the importance of understanding tattvas, realities, to comprehend Jain metaphysics. In the same session, another paper was presented on the topic of naturalized epistemology and Jainism by Rakesh Kumar Singh, Zakir Hussain College. The paper compares Queen's naturalized epistemology with Jainism and noting shares themes like rejection of a strict foundationalism. And afterward, after the lunch, the session 9 was closed and the lunch was offered, and after that academic session 10 was resumed, and the 10th session was chaired by Dr. Rajesh Kumar Jha sir of our department. In this, 3 papers were presented. First, from the Professor Bimlendra Kumar sir from ICCR Ambedkar Chair, Lumbini University, presented the paper on non-violence, ahimsa, and conflict resolution in Jainism. He explained the conflict of the society persists in the conjugation with the certain deep-rooted latent psychological tendencies in the mind of the people. The social conflicts are psychologically conditioned, and they are obviously a consequences of unreflective mechanistic response to sense experiences. And afterwards, through online, the second paper was presented by Ajay Verma from JNU, Verbal Absolutism and Its Ethical Implications, a critique from Jain perspective. His paper was aimed as an interesting status in terms of a substance metaphysics. He established that our standing on the world is not only inevitable linguistic in nature, but also absolutely and totally so insofar as we can possess a realm beyond language, but cannot be conceptualized it beyond it mere things. Third and last paper was presented by Dr. Shipra Dikshit, gendering through worldview and language, examining Prakriti through behavior's lens. Main agenda of her paper was to show that differentiation is not to confined within any aspect of study, ontology, epistemology, or cosmology. Moreover, comparing with behaviors situated uh, body will also be fruitful to new aspect on gender distinctions within two cultures. So regarding the parallel session was also going parallelly with the academic session 10. So in this parallel session, at least more than 15 papers has been presented. They were Jignesh Seth presented paper on and a Jain theory of truth, correspondence, coherence, and pragmatism. And second was Pavitra Jain from DAU presented paper on consciousness during sleep, applying Jain theory of karma. Another scholar, Neeraj Dahal of BHU, presented paper on the importance of truth in the philosophical inquiry. Further to this, Abhinav Tyagi of DU presented his paper on reconsidering ontology after the Cramps debate. Afterwards, Vijay Lakshmi Rai of our department presented paper on natural language semantics and analytical appraisal. Another papers of between perception and reality, examining the foundation of and limits of a representationalism, were presented by Santika Adhikari of our department. Also, Riya Gupta from our department presented paper entitled Austin's Speech Acts and Langton's Defense in Unveiling the Subordination of Women Through Pornography. Last in this series, Divakar Mura, that's me, presented paper on artificial intelligence and metaphysical perspective of reality in Jainism. After me, Rishikesh Chauhan of our department presented paper on non-cognitivism beyond realism, a moral analysis. And afterwards, Abhay Raj Yadav of our department presented paper on analytical and critical study of the concept of A.J. Ayer's emotive theory of a moral judgment. And few are the names. They also presented. The Gaurav Mishra, research scholar from Lucknow University, presented paper on possibility of conclusive verification and criteria of meaning in logical positivist tradition. In this, Dr. Renu Kumari of our department, Anekantavad in various disciplines. In this series, in continuation of this series, Anita Yadav of our department presented paper on Wittgenstein language analysis in the context of Syadwad. Afterwards, Pradeep Kumar Gond of our university of our department presented paper on critical analysis of religious tolerance and behavior in Jainism. And afterwards, Aradhana of our department presented paper on significance of Syadwad in the moral judgment, and so on. So at last, we can say that I want to conclude the report by saying that all the world admires a deed well done, and I think with all modesty that we have done this action well. Let us hope that we can do this again with same spirit in which we have done this. And we will raise our department to the new heights of quality and excellence, and also we will fulfill the objective and aim of Bhagwan Shri Ansanath Jain Fund. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Divakar, for presenting a brief report on the whole seminar. And now I would request Professor R.C. Pradhan, sir, for a valedictory address.
Respected Chair, Professor Chakravarti, Professor Misra, the head of the department, Professor Mehta, the chairman of the Jain Research Fund, Dr. Rahul Maurya, the coordinator of the seminar, and all co-coordinators, Dr. Priyanka Mishra and Dr. Kalpana Yadav, esteemed scholars in the audience, all our dear friends, the young scholars, researchers, and students, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really privileged to deliver the valedictory address. Dr. Maurya really wanted me to do this job, which is, of course, a difficult one. Let me begin by saying, and by echoing the words of Divakar, who ended by saying that the work is well done. I repeat it, the work is well done. And the credit goes to the department, to the coordinator and the co-coordinators. I congratulate all of them for this success of this seminar. It is not just a formality I am saying that it is successful. It is really successful in the sense that we have done our job well. Our intention was to do the job well, and we did it. The fact that we are all present together this cold evening, in fact, the coldest evening, that shows how committed we have been to the success of this seminar. So, this department has, as rightly noted, been very active always. Even when I was a student, this department was very active. There was not a single week when some lecture program or other was not held. So that shows the department has a continuous tradition of having excellent academic programs And that also has given the department an international image which really attracts the students across the globe. That is a fact of history, and we must acknowledge it. So our responsibility is to continue the same tradition and reach greater heights as has been expressed earlier. And it is the joint responsibility of all of us, especially those who are uh, in the department itself, to keep the tradition growing and growing to glorious heights. Let us come to the theme of the seminar. As it has been rightly noted by Dr. Moria, that these three concepts, language, truth, and reality, are perspective from analytic and Jaina philosophy, is truly well conceived in the sense that these three concepts are very, very crucial to understanding analytic philosophy itself. And Jaina philosophy is no less committed to the idea of truth, to the idea of reality, and the idea of language. And it is a matter of great satisfaction that analytic philosophy and Jaina philosophy have come together, have joined hands together to enlighten us as to what language, truth, and reality are all about. We have an idea that analytic philosophy is anti any other philosophy, including Indian, metaphysical, and perhaps continental philosophy. I think that is a misconception. Analytic philosophy is not one philosophy, it is a bundle of philosophies. So when we talk of analytic philosophy, you have to take an overview of the developments of analytic philosophy. And analytic philosophy has discussed all in its own way that philosophers are own to discuss. So the conflict between, for example, the continental and the analytic philosophy is also a misnomer, because both traditions do focus on the central theme of philosophy, though from different perspectives. I personally believe that Indian philosophical systems are no less analytic. If by analysis we mean not restrictively or restrictedly language analysis only. The broad spectrum of analysis includes the analysis of reality itself, which is a metaphysical concept, and truth itself is a semantical concept, a logical concept, and language, of course, universally admitted uh, as very important for anything that we do, including philosophizing. So in that sense, I could be, I would not be wrong if all our philosophical systems in India also apply the technique of analytic philosophy uh, to understand, to unearth the deeper foundations of all the systems. Analytic philosophy will not take away anything, or analytic method will not take away from the systems at all. Rather, it will highlight what has been really underlying all these systems. And it is important that we ourselves open to the light that also comes from every side. That is what our Vedic mantra says, Anu Bhadra Kratava Yantu Vishwadaha. Let the noble ideas come from every side. If noble ideas are there, we have no reason not to accept them at all. So this is how we can have a joint venture always with some of the Western traditions and Indian traditions to see how fruitfully they can be juxtaposed, how fruitfully can they join hands in exploring the nature of truth, reality, and everything else. Let me come to analytic philosophy, because there have been many misgivings about analytic philosophy itself. In fact, in his inaugural welcome address, Professor Misra uh, summarized the negative connotation of or negative view about analytic philosophy, that it's just a slogan and perhaps it's an empty verbiage or something like that. But let me just clarify why analytic philosophy has been so dominant, at least in the Anglo-Saxon philosophical world. I mean, the English-speaking world, of which we are also a part, a proud part are that. Because without English, we could not have come to the world stage at all. So let us also learn from what others have said or done. So in that sense, analytic philosophy will be very much welcome. What analytic philosophy has done, in fact, it has been highlighted by Professor Rakesh Chandra in his inaugural address. In fact, that is the beginning, that is the keynote address that has given us a perspective according to which why we should discuss language, truth, and reality as fundamental problems in philosophy. Now, in that respect, as we can see, that analytic philosophy is not just a slogan. It is not just a method. It is also a worldview. It is also, in a sense, a conceptual framework or multitude of conceptual frameworks in which we can really understand the nature of human beings, the nature of the world, and nature of, for example, language, truth, and everything else. So in that sense, it is a method with an underlying commitment towards a well-grounded, what we may call a perspective. It is not just about, say, language. It is also about logic. It is not just about truth and meaning. It is also about reality. So in that sense, analytic philosophy is a continuous development of the Western tradition. Western tradition has this unique feature that every few decades, it changes, it takes a new turn without disowning the developments that have taken place earlier. So that is a dynamicity of the Western tradition, which we must appreciate, because they never disown their past. Even Plato and Aristotle are as much lively for the Western thinkers as anything could be. Though, unfortunately, we in India lack in this owning of the past. Westerners never disown their past. Even Hegel, who is poo-pooed by some of the analytic thinkers, is very much relevant. So in that sense, what I want to suggest is that analytic philosophy is a continuous development of Western philosophy itself. Within analytic philosophy, the echoes of Kant and Hegel cannot be ignored. Kant and Hegel are behind many of these analytic thinkers. In fact, in my understanding, Wittgenstein himself is a distant child of a Kantian tradition, or one can say a Aristotelian tradition. So in that sense, one can say that nothing is lost in analytic philosophy. Analytic philosophy in a few decades, of course, that was a period of deviance when positivism started to disowning the past. But now the sorry fact is this, that positivism itself is now disowned by the same analytic thinkers, because they really did a massive disservice to Western tradition itself by saying that metaphysics is meaningless. Nothing could be more meaningless than this statement that metaphysics is meaningless, because metaphysics is vociferously talking about reality. Whether you agree or not, you are exploring reality. In whatever form you really want, you are exploring reality, just as we are exploring now through the prism of language. Maybe earlier, the Western thinkers understood reality through the prism of experience. That is what empiricism is, or through the prism of reason. That is what the rationalist rationalism is. So reality has been the focus of any philosophical thinking. So analytic philosophy is no exception. In that sense, it will be really right to suggest that metaphysics is an underlying subcurrent or current of analytic philosophy itself. Who can deny that there is metaphysics in Frege? What is the metaphysics it will be? It is not speculative metaphysics of absolute spirit of Hegel, but the metaphysics of understanding the world through logic. That is the metaphysics. And that is what is, for example, Michael Dummett doing, that you have to understand reality through logic. That's why his most famous book is The Logical Basis of Metaphysics. So metaphysics can be done in many ways. And logic is one of the ways of doing metaphysics. So logic, though we take it is a formal system, but that formal system is itself opens the way for understanding the reality. Who could have dreamed of a Kant without an Aristotle? Because Aristotle's logic gave the impetus for Kant to explore the structure of reality through the categories. So similarly, who could have imagined that there will be a Hegel who will give us the notion of an absolute spirit, which he thought is the nature of the reality itself? He may be wrong, because many people doubted that Hegel was not doing any philosophical exercise based on common sense. But if we understand the spirit of Western philosophy itself, right from, say, Plato through Spinoza and many other rationalist thinkers, the philosophy of Hegel becomes inevitable. Because if you go through the process of development of reason, it was up to Hegel to say that perhaps reason really is explaining the whole universe. The universe is the manifestation of reason, not spirit. So these metaphysical thoughts, though they may appear now to us to be obnoxious, but they are rooted in the philosophical tradition of the West. So analytic philosophy itself is a development from within analytic philosophy. From within Western philosophy. Analytic philosophy has brought this notion to the mind of the Westerners or Western thinkers, that unless you emphasize language and its centrality to our being, to be our being human beings, and to the centrality of the being of the universe, you cannot understand what the universe is. So language has entered into the phenomena, into the horizon. And as it has been noted earlier, mind has itself entered into the horizon now. So both, it is not language alone which is revealing the nature of reality. Both mind and language are now collaborating together to reveal what the nature of the reality is. So analytic philosophy is branching off now into philosophy of language, into philosophy of mind, and philosophy of consciousness, and many more branches are coming. In fact, moral philosophy is no less a branch of analytic philosophy. The way moral philosophy is being done is could be taken as a branch of analytic philosophy. Even there is analytic metaphysics, and there is also analytic philosophy of science. So in that sense, analytic philosophy is opening up itself into multiple branches, so that we can suggest, we can really see how we understand these basic concepts like truth and reality. Now, what we have achieved in our 3-day seminar is to focus on these three distinct concepts. Our effort has been, as I can really see the totality of the picture, that we have tried to distance ourselves from some of the traditional thought about language, truth, and reality. I now can mention that Dr. Moria himself has given an orientation towards understanding the post-Wittgensteinian, post uh, uh, yes, post Wittgenstein analytic philosophy, which has now taken us to Richard Rorty's very voluminous works, which really contains an internal critique of analytic philosophy. So, in fact, he has really oriented analytic philosophy towards a new pragmatism. So he has really pragmaticized analytic philosophy. The analytic philosophy itself was distancing itself from pragmatism, and he has brought in elements of postmodernism from continental philosophy, so that the post-enlightenment project of Rorty is now becomes a notable feature of analytic philosophy. That is why some of the concepts have been really crucial for us from the postmodern point of view, whether there is a reason at all or not. And Rorty has really highlighted the fact that you cannot have a reason with a capital R. You cannot have a transcendental approach to things. You have to take a historicist, you have to take a contingency embedded approach to things. So his famous book, Contingency, Irony and Solidarity, is a landmark book, really. In fact, that is his New Testament to some kind of a post-modernism within analytic philosophy. So the post-enlightenment project of analytic philosophy is perhaps at this moment the most important phase. I myself felt, along with Dr. Moria, that if we take an absolutistic and a transcendental point of view from within analytic philosophy, we may look a bit conservative. We may look outmoded. So if we take the Rortyian approach to things, a more immanent historicist and more or less relativistic, more or less, it is not relativism per se, but a more or less relativistic view of things, perhaps we will be closer to reality. But this is a debatable point. Whether we can disown truth altogether, whether we can have no theory of truth at all, whether we can disown objectivity as Rorty suggests by accepting solidarity or intersubjectivity, whether we can get away from the Kantian mode of thinking, the Hegelian mode of thinking, by taking a different route to the nature of reality. This is the crucial question, and none of us have agreed on anything. As I can see, this is the outcome of the seminar. We began with a note from one of the eminent philosophers, Akhil Bigrami, that you cannot really take away truth, because truth is immanent to our language and thought. He said primacy of truth, primitivity of truth, which I agree, and most of us will also agree, that in every case, whenever you use language, the question of why whether the sentence or proposition is true or not, this question will arise. He also emphasized another thing, that reason, even its practical shape, has to be emphasized. You have to ask, why should I do this? That means reason in some form or other will be always with us. So truth and reason will be rehabilitated in the language of both Davidson and McDowell. You have to rehabilitate. Why the word rehabilitate is being used? Because Rorty has really struck at the foundation of these concepts. He has struck at the root of the concepts. Therefore, rehabilitation program is going on. Now, this is an internal battle within analytic philosophy. Both parties understand that without truth, you cannot get away, we cannot do anything. Okay, so Rorty also understands that I do not want a truth with a capital T, but I want small truths. I want historical truth. I want contingent truth. That is Rati. But how much contingency you can accept? If everything is massively contingent, where will you end? You must accept some kind of necessity somewhere, even if within a historic system of thinking. So in that sense, this is an internal debate is going on. And this seminar, I will always remember as our effort to understand those problems from our limited point of view. So all of us have been engaged in this debate. Either we are somewhere for pro-Roti or somewhere anti-Roti, but we are within analytic philosophy. So this is the first point of our seminar, that we are really trying to understand a problem which is a burning problem in analytic philosophy. So if this seminar is successful, then it is because that it has hinted at where the truth, where the problem lies. And all of us in the last 3 days have been engaged with this problem, whether we are articulating in some form or other. Even if feminism, for example, last paper I am mentioning, even feminism is also have to accommodate itself within analytic philosophy, because nothing can be unchallenged in philosophy. What we call the dominance of the masculine, dominance of the purusha, is also to be questioned. That is exactly what philosophy is. Philosophy is not really to accept in toto. Philosophy is to question, to examine, and then you accept or not, that is up to you. But questioning and examining become our central philosophical method. And analytic philosophy is excellent in questioning and examining. With these words, I really again express my deep appreciation uh, for everything that for the participants like us, what the organizers have done, what the university has done for us. So on behalf of everybody, I really express my deep gratitude to the department, to the organizers, and to the university as such, because the university is the home of which department is a part, and department is the home of this seminar. So I express our gratitude to everybody around, and I wish you all a happy new year. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with your profound words. You are truly an inspiration. And now I would like to invite our chair of this valedictory program, Professor Nirmalaya Chakravarti, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay, I'll take that one. Well, we have traveled a long path for last 3 days. There is a method prescribed by classical Indian philosophers to determine the tatparya of a text, of a philosophical text. And one of those method is called Upakrama Upasanghara Aikya. So if somebody wants to, determine the tatparya of this sangoshti, of this international conference, unfortunately, because of some travel problems, I couldn't attend the inaugural session. But during other sessions and now, whatever discussion we listened to during the valedictory address of Professor Pradhan, I could see the tatparya coming out of this conference is, let us keep our minds open. Let us try to assimilate, try to understand, try to critically assess, ideas coming from different directions. And especially in this seminar, we were considering insights that analytic philosophers have, offered, as well as the philosophical ideas available in Jaina philosophy. This title, Language, Truth, Reality, Perspectives from Analytic and Jaina Philosophy, uh, whenever I look at this title, the expression that comes to my mind is in some sense, comparative philosophy. All of us are aware of this term. Now, of course, comparative philosophy, has its different modes of understanding, different, ways of manifesting itself. If you look at the trajectory of Indian philosophical works for last, say, 100 years or so, you could see the different models, coming out of that what we call comparative philosophy. Somebody might ask that, suddenly why do we start talking about Jain philosophy as compared to analytic philosophy? Well, see, uh, tradition, this word tradition has got important message. Professor J.N. Mahanti distinguishes tradition from orthodoxy. If you look at the history of the commentatorial tradition of classical Indian philosophy, and Jain philosophy is not an exception to it, tradition constantly questions itself, constantly comes up with Purva Paksha, sometimes with Purva Paksha, just to refine its own ideas, just to represent its own ideas in a more cogent, in a more philosophically acceptable way. So Jain philosophy is a tradition in that sense. So in that sense, Jain philosophical tradition is contemporaneous. It is not a matter of history which was written, say, 1,000 years back. It is with us. It is growing. It is questioning itself. It is refining itself, reforming itself, and that is why we can place Jain philosophical tradition alongside the analytical philosophical tradition. So so I think the message that comes out of this 3-day long deliberations is that especially I would like to urge my young colleagues and research students to this is the time to renew our commitment to engage ourselves in a more rigorous, in a more systematic manner with the ideas of analytic philosophy and Jain philosophical tradition. So let us hope that our philosophical journey starts from today. After we go back, we had the opportunity of listening to some of very interesting presentations where scholars shared their ideas, their thoughts with us. So I'm sure that we have got enough intellectual nourishment. Uh, so let us now try to digest. Let us now try to enrich ourselves with the ideas, with the thoughts that we have received from the scholarly presentations for last 3 days. And last but not least, I'm really happy to note that we are living under the Maurya Yuga, and I would like to congratulate Rahul along with all the colleagues of this department, and of course the wonderful volunteers, the students, the research scholars of this department who have been working without any complaint, always with a smiling face, taking care of the nitty-gritty details of the seminar. We all know, there are always contingencies that come up, of which we were not, ready to face.
So I'm sure that, at least on my personal behalf, and I think all of us who have attended here, come here from outside, will share my optimism that this has been a very, very well organized, well thought out, well attended seminar. So I wish you all the best, and your onus is on you, my younger colleagues and students, to carry on this flag of the Department of Philosophy and Religion of Banaras Hind University. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your fascinating and engaging remarks. And now it's time to acknowledge those who are working tirelessly day and night. So I invite the coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Rahul Moore, for a formal vote of thanks. He deserves mighty applause for all his hard work.
Well, thank you, Dr. Priyanka. I'm here to do the impossible. Well, though this is the occasion where I have to formally thank everyone, but I think the kind of work that has gone, the kind of deliberations have taken place, and the kind of scholarship that we have witnessed, we cannot thank them enough. So let me begin with all the scholars and the philosophers who really accepted our request, and they managed to come towards the end. I mean, when we were almost beginning of this conference, in the very just one day before, there was a lot of fog and all, and many flights were getting cancelled and delayed. I was becoming hopeless that now what will happen to this conference. But it was the commitment of these uh, scholars and philosophers who did not give up. They keep trying, and they managed to get another flights, and that is how we have seen that we got more than 23 uh, uh, brilliant papers, and there have been world film scholars here who came and delivered their presentations. So I mean, I cannot really thank you all for all your efforts coming to this place from very far from here and attending this conference and deliberating. I mean, the kinds of discussions that have taken place from the audience and the scholars, it was, I mean, beyond the scale that one can measure. So I'm not going to take names of everyone, but all of you who managed to come and spoken here, right? It is, I mean, I just want to express my deep gratitude to all of you, because without you, we could not have had this kind of grand, successful seminar. Next, I would like to thank all those participants, right, who have not even presented papers, but then they have been thoroughly, rigorously participating, asking the questions. And I think you are drawing a lot of lessons, and you are drawing a lot of understandings home, and you will really carry forward many understandings from this conference. I would also like to thank all my faculty members of this department, because they have been always cordially ready for extending their supports. They have always been there for all kinds of moral support that we needed for any kind, not just this conference. They're always there for all kinds of academic activities that we have. I would also like to thank Professor Mukul Raj Mehta for his generous support and effort, without whom we could not have this kind of international conference. And I would also like to thank this Bhagwan Sriyansnath Jain Studies Fund, who has generously extended the support and made this event happen. I mean, I cannot really thank my head of the department enough, because he's been readily available for all kinds of support. I just take the papers, he will immediately sign. So I mean, so this kind of attitude, I mean, to this department from our head of the department, is remarkable. I mean, that is only how we can have these kinds of activities. And you see, he is staying here till 6 until we are finishing. Even if we are getting delayed, he's just okay. He says, okay, you just carry on. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It is, I mean, and once more, I'd like to thank BSJSF and institutions of eminence, which has also given me sufficient funds. So with these joint funds, we have been able to put up these kinds of international conference. This is, I mean, the work that you see behind this conference. There have been 12 committees of the student volunteers, and they have worked day and night. They have worked like a team, and that is how I have been able to take this conference smoothly going on. I'm not going to take names. There are more than 36 students in different committees, and they have been working tirelessly, and that is how we have come to this grandeur of this conference. So please put your big hand for our research scholars. And from our department, I would like to extend a deep gratitude to Sanjay ji, Mohan ji, Lal Bahadur ji, Neeraj ji, because though they are not visible, but they are invisible hands and they are doing a lot of work behind this conference. They really deserve a big applause. And I would like to also thank the cleaning staff who have regularly maintaining the cleaning of this conference. And towards the end, I cannot complete our thankfulness if I'm not thanking enough to my two co-coordinators, Dr. Kalpana Yadav and Dr. Priyanka Mishra. Without them, we couldn't have done this conference. So with this only, once again, I would like to extend deep gratitude to all of you. Without you, we couldn't have had this kind of successful conference. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now the high tea awaits here on the first floor. First floor. Before this, before we really proceed for high tea, I think, sir. No, no, no.
So thank you, Dr. Rahul. And now I would like to bring the session to an end. Thank you all for joining us today.